Okay.
Yeah, feel free to go ahead with the story.
Okay. So I wrote one song lyric that went like this. It's just one line, but it's relevant to what you showed there. Love is the force of attraction of the universe with itself. So that was the line that your image triggered in me, this song lyric I wrote over a decade ago. And the whole idea is that when we're, as human beings, looking who are attracted to other human beings to form relationships, we're actually looking for belonging, for connection. You know, we're looking to belong, and it's beyond just connecting with another human being. It's like we're on this journey together to discover what it is to be a human. You know, here's another human. You know, what's human nature? Human nature is a form of nature. That's that word human is the adjective, right? So we're, you know, to me in deep humanity, the essence is that we've not found how we are connected to nature. We've separated ourselves, and we feel alienated. That's why we're afraid of dying, you know, because we think when we die, that's it. This consciousness is gone, you know, and that's over. So we don't see it from the perspective that we're going from something small back into something big. Like, you know, we have to view that we're vanishing. You know, what we hold valuable, our consciousness is vanishing. But maybe it's the other way around. Maybe this is the small consciousness, and the human nature is returning to the nature, you know, the bigger, the mother from which we came from, right? So that song lyric was meant to reflect that when we look for love in other human beings, we're looking to reconnect with. That search for that love that expresses itself is actually the universe expressing itself, yearning to reconnect with itself, you know.
Beautiful. Yeah, I love that. It resonates
that's really
so
beautiful.
Much.
Yeah. I mean, it's even giving you, I was even imagining while he was speaking, how the universe actually, you know, emerged, you know, came into being. And you see all these fragments of different beings, you know, having different sets of consciousness. Nature, you know, itself in existence, it's different fragments. And we all are trying to coexist back into that uniform one atom that it used to be. So it's more of like humans are trying to get back into that cosmic space, you know, of being just that one redundant atom, you know, that existed right from the source, you know, before everything blown out and became reality and became the whole universe that we are looking at. So it's more of like everything is unfolding back into itself. Like we say, the universe is folding in back into itself. And in that folding in back, there are several mechanisms, different agents that are, you know, realizing themselves and, you know, doing an in-depth, you know, transformation, getting back into that position or getting ready. It's more of like electrons getting ready to be charged, you know, in that sense. So yeah, so we are all getting ready to be charged, but then for us to get charged, you need to be conductive enough, you know, and that getting to become that conductive material, you can't, you know, conduct when you are a standalone agent. That won't work. You know, you exist in a whole vast, you know, system of complexity. For you to maneuver through that, you need to be, you know, be uniform, you know. So that's really beautiful, a really beautiful point.
I think it could be, I don't know if you,
Actually.
I don't know what you think, but maybe that line could be connected with that image that you had, Stephen, to be some kind of messaging, you know, about what's happening at this time. You know, what are we trying to do as a species? You know.
Yeah, can you repeat that just so I have it written down?
Sure, you might be. I'll just chat the. I'll chat the line
sure.
down already.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so love is the force of attraction of the universe, because the universe expresses itself through us as human nature of the universe with itself.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that.
Because then what it shows is that
And-
it's because, our consciousness, for instance, is an articulation of nature, right? Just like, it's so interesting because we have these sensory organs and we look out at nature and we enhance them with instruments, and then we do science, right? So then we look for patterns in nature, but it's nature looking at nature, it's human nature is a part of nature, and we are looking at nature itself. So it's like looking into a mirror. When a scientist is studying the quote outer reality, it's actually nature studying itself, right? So it's in the same way our love is for another human being or for nature itself is an articulation of nature itself at a deeper level. It's just expressed in this human form that we have, like a cat will
Isn't this
express its
in
love
this
in a
vessel?
different way.
Yeah, in this
In this vessel, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes
Exactly.
sense. It's literally, nature has been studying itself for billions and billions of years, and then that is what that's what evolution is all about. Nature studying itself.
I think one thing that we need to be careful of is, like, if we're making this message universal, then what happens if we're talking about billions of years of evolution, then we have fundamentalist Christians involved, for instance, because we don't want to exclude them, right? So
yeah, we don't. But it's akin to talking to flat earthers. Do we actually, we're also fundamentally excluding flat earthers as well, right?
Well, here's my thought. Like with deep humanity, we're trying to get to a place where the common human denominators kick in between all the different cultures.
Right.
So if there's the fundamentalist Christians, the fundamentalist Islamists, and then there's a scientist, what do they all have in common, right? To me, the narrative there is where people get stuck, because then people spin off different narratives, based on their cultural context. So and they have their different gods. What'd you say, Derek?
I mean, again, we're trying to talk about objective, looking at things from the objective space, because like you were telling me the other day, nobody can debunk the fact that we all need water to survive. We all need a place to sleep.
Common human denominators.
Exactly. We all need food to eat. Nobody can say no, that's not possible. So we need to look into that spectrum where whatever message we're conveying is something that, okay, if a Christian hears it, it's like, okay, this resonates with me. I do this every day, and this is something I can do. If I don't do it, I know the consequences. An Islamic person can also say, okay, this is something that by logic, it makes sense. It's not something I have to take into an esoteric, system of understanding, or to a religious system of understanding before I actually act upon it. So the message has to be clearer.
Yeah. And the
red is red. If it's black, it's black. If it's blue, it's blue.
Yeah. But you see, this is why we're bringing on board Carl Hayden Smith, the researcher, because he actually works in this area of using technology to create experiences where the individuals can actually experience their deeper nature, like how their cognition works, how their perception works, and actually, because we have all these we have all these biases, these cognitive biases, and all these ways of actually experiencing reality, and we construct reality as well, but we don't see that, because this stuff is like, you don't normally see this, like, an average person does not see a CO2 molecule because they don't have the instrumentation built into their eyes to see a CO2 molecule, right? So they can't see it, right? But if you can create the systems like these artificial systems to help enhance your way of perceiving and cognizing reality, perceiving reality and constructing reality, then you can actually see that you're actually constructing the reality, right? It's a construction that you are making. So once you experience that for yourself, then you're not so strongly attached to a narrative, because you can see that you are the one who constructed it, right? So there's different fields, areas that we're going to explore with Carl to see how we can break these down so people can actually have an experience, an immersive, participatory experience, so that it really hits them. It's not just intellectual, right?
Right.
And one of the really key areas is language, because we use language to construct the narratives. So if we can actually show people how they construct their ideas of the world based on the words they construct, right? And that's going to be challenging to do, but I think it's possible. But if you can do that, then people can then begin to see how they construct the concept of their God, right?
Yeah.
And
I
they
think it would
won't be
be
so fundamentalist.
Yeah, I think it'd be really interesting to, we tend to create personas as a way to understand who we're serving with what we're designing. But I find that that's very limiting. It tends to create this static image, a flattened reality that is really so much of an abstraction that it becomes a form of stereotyping, and actually it becomes a value frame for how does this person fit into a hierarchy of race, creed, gender, status, class, power, right? That is the marketing, public relations, advertising frame that we need to get away from. But if we can see individuals as
in their full complexity, full complexity,
they're each in a different pathway, or particle, wave. They are all of these things at once, but they're on a journey. So if I see my history as I conceive it as a story, then there's all these different points in my journey. The plot line takes me from this really fundamentalist Christian upbringing to actually going through this evolutionary change of learning how to learn through design, through conversation, through relationships, that my earlier conception of reality is way different than what it is now.
Exactly. And what we can do is with Jury's system, we could actually trace these evolutionary pathways that individuals make, right? And show how, and this is one way you can get through. Like if somebody was a fundamentalist Christian and then you track their journey and all of a sudden become an open-minded, then other fundamentalist Christians can actually say, oh, I relate to that, right? And then they can follow that journey and see where it leads, right?
Right.
So, because, you had an earlier graphic where you showed all the different people, but the collective. Well, I have this metaphor that we're like icebergs, and we have this if you have like a three-dimensional graphic that represents the complexity of this human being, and so here's Stephen, he's this shape here, right? And then here's Derek, he's this shape, and here's Gian, he's this shape, but they're all different, right? The interests and the things that we're afraid of, and the different experiences, we're all different hills and valleys and so on, right? And it's a journey, it's like evolutionary shaping of our experiences, right? So I'm like this, my dynamics, and then you're like this, Derek's like this, but we're all interacting with each other, and we're feeding back on each other to change in real time those shapes that represent us. So that's kind of how I see it, we're as we co-evolve together, we can co-devolve, right? We can co-devolve, or we can co-evolve, right? So if we co-evolve, then we're all sending feedback signals to each other that kind of bring us in this direction, right? And if you're in a gang of drug dealers, then it's going to devolve in this direction, right?
And that's kind of what I was trying to help people visualize with a very, very simple idea of a battery, just
Mhm.
being a symbol of the energy, the flows of energy within that system. And if you can see
Mhm.
that that battery is depleting, and that's entropy just taking over the system. And that's when we realize that that's the system that we've created is something that is depleting energy faster than it was created. If we think of, like Buckminster Fuller was talking about, the absurdity of digging all these fossil fuels out of the ground, which have developed over millions of years, that's kind of like the battery of the planet that we're digging up and then burning
Mhm.
faster than we
Mhm.
can ever regain that
Ameliorate.
energy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And once we realize like the battery's going to run out really quickly, we can actually refire the engine of entropy. And I hate using mechanistic metaphors when it relates to organisms. So like to rebirth the organism of syntropy that is
Mhm.
creating healthy soils, that is creating healthy forests that
Mhm.
breathe for the planet and regulate the fine balance of the air that we need to breathe. So
Mhm. Mhm.
when we realize that, we can't breathe without the forests,
Yeah.
they are actually part of us. And if we cut
Yeah.
them down, we're actually effectively like cutting out a lung.
Yeah. Exactly. Or the ocean. That's the creatures in the ocean. Same thing.
Right. You could say
We
that
need them
that's
all.
our digestive system. And it's actually processing energy from the sun through plankton, from the phytoplankton, that is creating also the phenomenon of creating air, but also transforming the sun's energy into other organic life forms that then become part
Mhm.
of the life cycle. Like
Mhm.
we have to really understand that
Yeah.
we are not separate from the earth. We're not separate
Yes.
from nature. Yeah.
Yes. Great.
That's very correct. Very, very correct. I mean, the forestries are our lungs, basically. We have lungs inside, but our external lungs are the trees. Once they said that the last tree, when the last tree dies, the last man on earth dies. I don't know who that last man is gonna be, having the last tree close to them, but that's the theory, because literally every single system that is on Earth depends on photosynthesis to happen,
Mhm.
before
Mhm.
before whatever simulation that this design has been made. For instance, the sun comes up tomorrow. When the sun doesn't come up tomorrow, who knows what might happen? But it's a whole lot of disaster that's going to happen when the sun doesn't come up tomorrow.
Yeah. Very true. Yes.
I saw this video of that was somebody placed up this theory that what happens when oxygen finishes up,
Mhm.
from Earth, what happens when oxygen is limited, for
Yeah.
just 5 seconds, on
Mhm.
Earth. There's a lot that's gonna happen. A lot. There's a lot
Yeah.
that's gonna happen. Unimaginable stuff that's gonna happen.
Yeah.
And that exists for every other, no, for every other system or mechanism that exists in nature. What happens when all human beings on Earth, disappear? There's a whole lot of disaster that's gonna happen to the planet. What happens when all animals disappear? There's a whole lot of disaster that's gonna happen. So it's more of like this interconnected system of obliteration when one part of this system is not balanced, if that makes sense, right? More of like when you're solving a simultaneous equation, whatever you do on the left side, you must do it on the right side. right? And that is literally what is happening in nature. If I'm doing good on the right, I need to do good on the left. And if I don't do that, then it's just a problem, which automatically is going to affect the right, of which I've been placing in resources, building for so many years, which is what we've been doing right now. We've been doing good to ourselves, or to this capitalist reality that we've created for so many years. We think we've been doing good to humanity by all this technology advancement, all this mining, all this deep exploration, all this we've taken so much from the earth thinking we are doing good to humanity, but in the end, we are now seeing the outcomes of those actions. What happened when what happens when that process or that action was happening, and we took into account the the effects that might happen based on those actions we were taking so many years ago. Then the outcome for now should be different. That is why we are in this belief that having this understanding of ontological design, taking into understanding ontological design. Whatever you're designing, whatever you're putting back into the environment, in turns designs you back as a human, because you are part of that, entire framework. Like you said, nature is studying nature. So if nature designs something and puts it back into nature, nature must reward, affects nature back. That is a simple, logic that is there. It's happening right now as I'm speaking, right? So yeah, I'm saying for us to, I mean, I think we've been so laid back in thinking long term, or thinking the long term effects of whatever actions we are taking in the present, and we are too focused on the present, right? But with what we're doing right now, I believe we are looking down into the future. We are looking down into hundreds and thousands of years after, this system is being developed. What happens next? What's happening? After we've researched, after we've done the goal, what's happening after all of that? Because we should take into account whatever we're doing right now has a desired effect. Every action has a reaction, and this is something that needs to be taken into account as we are building this framework right from this beginning. What happens after we've achieved this dream? Are we just simply going to be living in an environment that is, low carbon, that is sustainable, that is free from injustice, that is free from, all these problems that we are facing? Is that what is going to happen? Or is the opposite going to happen? That different sets of problems are going to come by? But that's not something that we have an answer to right now. But I believe with what we have, at this moment, with what we have right now, we have something solid to actually start building or laying foundations to which the people coming after us can actually see and then build upon this. If we put this down there, if we write this and put it, even just putting this down there, imagine the people who came 200 years, before us, wrote down there that, okay, we did this. We mined this out of here. When you come 100 years later, don't mind this particular stuff. Come with a different innovative idea. Let this particular stuff we've mined for so many years, let it grow back. Imagine if those things were written down, before we came. Am I making sense? Whatever we are doing right now, we need to write down, some memos concerning what a desired outcome could be, should in case we are not here anymore, because we have good intentions towards what we're doing. But the people coming after us, they are gonna live in that system. They are simply gonna live in that, pro-utopian system that we are trying to build right now. But would they keep it the way we envision it to be years after we're gone? What will make them follow those rules? those commands. There needs to be a system, or there needs to be some foundational work that is done to keep them on the right path.
Yeah, that does make sense. This is something that I was sharing with Gian. We were learning during the Design Science Studio a process called backcasting, where we imagine the kind of future world that we want to live in, and then we kind of step back from that future that we want to live into or leave to future generations. And then what are the steps that we needed to take to be able to get there? And so we imagine that future and then go one step back from that. Well, how did we get there? And then keep on going one step further back and back until we get to the present. And then, okay, that becomes the critical path or the journey that we can take. And we don't know if it's going to work, but this is at least gives us a sense of, it becomes a kind of speculative fiction that we actually live into. And I've been playing with this idea of narrative where we kind of look back at the past, and that's kind of our nonfiction, but we're in the present. We have this present awareness, and we're like the mycelia network at the edges of the network as we're pushing into the ground, or if we're fungi embedded in the ground, we're putting out little networks to connect with other beings in the forest underground. That becomes our communication system, and that foundational network becomes the way that that informs the generations to come. As you build that network that exists for thousands of years to facilitate the communication among all the living beings in the forest. So we do that same sort of thing as human beings, as we're building that kind of network of memory and shared knowledge and resources. What we found through watching a film called Symbiotic Earth, where it was featuring the life of microbiologist Lynn Margulis, is that she was learning from the microbiology, the bacteria and the small organisms that formed all of life at the beginning of the formation of all the different species on the earth. At the very beginning, everything was very, very simple. But when she was looking at the DNA, she was realizing, well, the DNA is not deterministic. It's actually a library of resources that allow that organism to adapt to the environmental conditions. So what's explaining all these bursts of creativity within the geological record is that the conditions changed and the organisms had to adapt really quickly to the changes in the environment. So they used the library of resources in the DNA to be able to shift body forms and to create new abilities within that environment that would help them to be able to adapt to the new conditions. And that has been an ongoing collaborative learning process where organisms are sharing this DNA, these little libraries of information about how we adapt. And that's what we're doing now, is we are creating the networks to share all of these resources together, where we're extending that ability beyond the physical and into the metaphysical, or into the physical realm through our books and media. And these become extensions of nature into how do we accelerate this process just by using language and our cognitive abilities. So it's, we're just at the cusp of realizing that's what we're doing.
Exactly. Yeah. Great. I think probably time to wrap up. I think it was
Sounds
a
good.
great
Yeah.
session.
Yeah, that was good.
I think Derek has to go to a meeting in
Yeah.
a few minutes
Yeah,
here.
I this meeting with this lead that was introduced to me by one of these friends of mine. He's into venture capital. So I'm trying to get his conversations going with this guy. He
Mhm.
said he has experience
Okay.
in kind of like getting people to get some funds to buy out lands. And I'm in that process
Okay.
of buying out this nature reserve
Mhm.
that conservative for elephants. And I think one of
Right.
that property can also maybe be converted into more of like a place where we could bring in this innovators like ourselves, have this construction rendering more of like a lab done. It's gonna serve as more a foundational way for biomimicry. You have more of nature to work with. That's what I'm trying to
Mhm.
do. So you have more nature to work with.
Mhm. Well, good luck on that meeting.
Thank you so much.
And thank you so much. Thank you so much for participating here. And
Yeah.
I'll send out links for Daniel Hornveg's meeting and also Carl Hayden Smith's meeting. And you
Okay.
guys can let me know if you can make it.
That sounds great. Yeah, I'd love to participate. I think this was really good to be able to see what everyone's working on and how there's some
Mm.
amazing synergies between everything. So I
Yeah.
think what we're doing here is starting to manifest our ability to coordinate our actions and our collective intelligence.
Mm.
And I think that's going to be a big part of the launch, is to be able to prove that it can happen within our own group before we
Yes,
try to
exactly.
lead
Do it outside of
other
us.
people into the same process. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, we should set up the system and try it ourselves.
exactly.
Make sure that
Right.
it works. It's
Yeah,
resilient.
we become the prototype.
Mhm.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, Stephen, can you send out the videos once you're finished?
Yep. Yeah. One's in the process of converting, and so I guess I can just upload it to my own personal YouTube channel
Sure.
if that works.
Mhm.
Sure, and then I'll share it out.
Okay. Thanks so
Okay.
much.
Great.
Take
Thanks,
care.
Ken. Thanks, Derek. Have a great
Bye.
day
Bye bye. See you
or
soon.
evening. Okay. Bye bye.
See you soon.